My name is Naomi Bennett, and I was 34 years old when my mother-in-law publicly reminded me that, in her eyes, I would never be family. It happened during my husband Daniel's promotion celebration. Nearly 60 guests filled the private banquet hall of the Riverside Country Club, executives, neighbors, relatives, close family friends. Everyone had gathered to celebrate Daniel becoming vice president of Bennett Construction. Everyone, except me. I'd spent weeks organizing the event. Booked the venue, designed every invitation, ordered the food, even paid the deposit after Daniel's company delayed reimbursing us. Yet when the guests arrived, my mother-in-law Victoria Bennett greeted everyone like she had planned the evening herself. She smiled proudly. My son worked so hard for this. People applauded. Daniel accepted every compliment with a smile. Not once did he mention me. I told myself it didn't matter, until dinner began. The waiter pulled out a chair for me beside Daniel. Before I could sit, Victoria stopped him. "No, that seat is for family." Waiter looked confused. "So, where should she sit?" Victoria pointed toward a small table near the kitchen doors. "Over there." Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. I laughed softly. "I'm sure there's been a mistake." Victoria smiled. "No mistake. You married my son. That doesn't make you one of us." A few people looked down at their plates. Nobody said a word. I turned toward Daniel, waiting, hopping, expecting him to finally speak. Instead, he adjusted his tie, looked away, and stayed completely silent. That silence hurt more than Victoria's words ever could. She folded her arms. "Well, are you going to argue?" I slowly picked up my handbag. "No, you've made your feelings perfectly clear." Victoria smirked. "I'm glad you understand." I nodded. "I do." I started walking toward the exit behind me. I heard someone whisper, "Poor woman." Quietly said, "I can't believe her husband didn't defend her." Just as I reached the banquet hall doors, my phone rang. The screen displayed an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something made me answer. "Hello," a calm voice spoke. "Good evening. I speak with Ms. Naomi Bennett. I'd like to discuss the company your late grandfather left in your name." I stopped walking. My heart skipped a beat. Behind me, Victoria laughed loudly. "Go ahead. Take your little phone call." "We are having dinner." She had no idea that one phone call was about to change every life in that room. I stood frozen near the banquet hall entrance. The laughter behind me faded into the background. The voice on the phone continued calmly. "Ms. Bennett, my name is Richard Collins. I'm the senior attorney for Collins and Harper Estate Law. Your grandfather instructed us to contact you the moment your family's annual trust meeting was completed." My heart skipped. My grandfather passed away 7 years ago. His final instructions have remained sealed until today. I glanced back toward the banquet hall. Victoria was raising a champagne glass. Daniel stood beside her, still smiling, still pretending nothing had happened. The attorney spoke again. "Apologize for the timing. I believe you should know, as of 30 minutes ago, you officially became the majority owner of Bennett Construction Holdings." I stopped breathing. "I'm sorry." "What did you say?" "The trust transferred exactly as your grandfather requested. You now own 51% of the company." I looked through the glass doors. Daniel was thanking everyone for celebrating his promotion. He had no idea. The attorney continued. "There's one more matter. The board requested an emergency meeting tomorrow morning. Would like to appoint you as executive chair." I closed my eyes. For years, everyone believed Daniel's father had built the family business. The truth, only my grandfather and a handful of lawyers knew. Grandpa had secretly purchased controlling shares decades earlier. He never trusted anyone except me, not because I was the smartest, but because, as he always said, power should belong to the person who protects people, not the person who demands respect. Attorney cleared his throat. "Would you like me to inform the current executives tonight?" I looked back into the ballroom. Victoria was laughing. He pointed toward the empty chair beside Daniel, then loudly announced, "Now dinner can finally begin." Several guests forced awkward smiles. I answered quietly, "No, tell them myself." The attorney paused. "As you wish, Ms. Bennett. One last thing. The chairman of the board is already on his way." I frowned. "Here, yes," insisted on congratulating the new owner personally. The call ended. I stood silently for a few seconds. Then I turned around and walked back into the banquet hall. Victoria rolled her eyes. "Oh, couldn't stay away." I smiled. "No, I forgot something." She laughed. Looked directly at Daniel. "My company." Room fell silent. Daniel frowned. "What are you talking about?" Before I could answer, the banquet hall doors opened. 3 men in tailored navy suits walked inside. Behind them, an elderly gentleman carrying a leather portfolio stepped forward. Every executive in the room immediately stood up. Someone whispered, "That's the chairman." The chairman scanned the room, ignored everyone else, walked straight toward me, extended his hand, and said loudly enough for every guest to hear, "Congratulations, Ms. Bennett. It's an honor to meet the new majority owner of Bennett Construction Holdings." Chairman smiled warmly as he shook my hand. "Congratulations, Ms. Bennett. The room had gone completely silent. Victoria stared at him. I'm sorry. There must be some misunderstanding. My son is the future of this company. Chairman looked at her politely. No, Mrs. Bennett, your son is an employee. Ms. Naomi Bennett is now the majority owner. Gasps spread across the ballroom. Daniel stepped forward. That's impossible. My father owned this company. Chairman slowly opened his leather portfolio. Entirely. He removed several original documents. 32 years ago, your grandfather Arthur Bennett quietly purchased 51% of Bennett Construction. Never transferred those shares to your father. Placed them into a private family trust. Daniel frowned. My father never told me. Chairman nodded, because he wasn't allowed to. It was Mr. Bennett's final legal instruction. Every guest looked toward me. The chairman continued. Only one person was named as the beneficiary. He looked directly into my eyes. Naomi Bennett. Victoria's face turned white. But why her? The chairman smiled. Because your grandfather believed leadership should be earned. Inherited. He turned another page. Brought something else. He handed me a sealed envelope. Board voted this afternoon. I slowly opened it. Inside was a formal resolution effective immediately. Naomi Bennett is appointed chairwoman of Bennett Construction Holdings. A murmur swept through the room. One executive stood, then another. Within seconds, every senior executive applauded. Not for Daniel, for me. Victoria grabbed Daniel's arm. Something. Daniel swallowed hard. You knew about this? I shook my head. I found out 20 minutes ago. He looked stunned. You could have told me. I smiled sadly. You could have defended me. For years, never did. He lowered his eyes, unable to answer. Just then, a chairman spoke again. There is one final matter. He looked toward Daniel. As part of today's board decision, your promotion has been cancelled. Room froze. You will remain with the company. He paused, pending a full performance review. Daniel looked like the floor had disappeared beneath him. What? The chairman's voice remained calm. Board concluded that many of the company's most successful projects were not led by you. He turned toward the executives. Every major contract, every profitable expansion, every cost-saving strategy, designed by Ms. Naomi Bennett. Several executives immediately nodded. One senior manager smiled. She's been leading this company for years. She simply never asked for the credit. Victoria slowly backed into a chair. She whispered, all this time, it was you. I nodded quietly. I wasn't trying to impress anyone. I was trying to protect the company. Then I looked around the room. At every guest who had watched my humiliation, my grandfather taught me something. Strongest leader is usually the quietest person in the room. Nobody laughed anymore, nobody even spoke, because everyone finally understood. The woman they had asked to leave owned the company they were celebrating. The applause slowly faded. No one returned to their seats. Every executive remained standing, waiting. The chairman smiled. Chairwoman Bennett, the board is ready whenever you are. I nodded politely. Thank you. Then I looked toward the exit. Victoria hurried in front of me. Naomi, please don't leave. Her voice shook. Only 20 minutes earlier, she had pointed at the door and said, get out. Now she stood there crying. I'm sorry. Never knew. I looked at her calmly. No, you knew exactly who I was. You simply decided I wasn't worth respecting. Tears rolled down her face. I thought Daniel deserved everything. I thought you were just. She couldn't finish the sentence. I smiled sadly. Just his wife. She lowered her head. Yes, I nodded, and that's exactly why you lost me. Daniel slowly walked toward me. His shoulders were slumped. His confidence was gone. I failed you. I should have stopped my mother years ago. I should have stood beside you. His voice cracked. I'm sorry. I looked into his eyes. For 6 years. I kept waiting for you to choose me. Never did. He wiped away a tear. Can we fix this? I took a deep breath. I forgive you. Hope appeared on his face. Then I quietly added, but forgiveness doesn't rebuild broken trust. His eyes filled with tears. He finally understood. The chairman stepped beside me. One last document. He handed me a small folder. Inside was a letter written by my grandfather. I recognized his handwriting immediately. My hands trembled as I unfolded it. Naomi, if you're reading this, it means people finally showed you who they really are. Never hate them for it. Just remember who stood beside you when you had nothing. People who only respect your success would never have respected your struggle. By the time I reached the last line, I couldn't hold back my tears. I carefully folded the letter, then looked around the ballroom, at the relatives who had laughed, at the guests who had stayed silent, at the husband who never defended me, and finally, at the woman who had tried to throw me out. I smiled peacefully. My grandfather left me this company, the greatest gift he gave me, teaching me never to measure my worth by someone else's opinion. Chairman extended his hand. Shall we go? I nodded. Together, we walked toward the exit. This time, every executive stepped aside to let me pass. Several applauded, others simply bowed their heads respectfully behind me. No one said a word. 6 months later, Bennett Construction recorded the highest profits in its history. Employee salaries increased, new training programs were introduced. Every worker received performance bonuses. At my first annual company meeting, I invited every employee from the newest apprentice to the oldest manager because Grandpa believed there are no small people, only leaders who forget where they came from. Daniel eventually resigned. He wanted to start over somewhere else. I wished him well, without anger, without bitterness. As for Victoria, she wrote me several letters. She apologized. She asked for another chance. I accepted her apology, but I never returned to another family dinner because I had finally learned something priceless. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's quietly building a life so meaningful that you never again need permission to belong.